Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AI Real Talk, the Curiosity Connection. And my guest today has me real curious on a lot of things related to computer science education, related to AI literacy, and how they all go together. And how do we do this? And how do we build this program for schools, for kids? One of the big things that I see in my work that I do is I have a lot of schools that I work with that aren't ready. They don't have the foundation set. So this guest today is definitely going to help with that. So I'm very excited to talk to today. I am with Stewart Brown, who is from codeforkids.io. Did I get that right?
You you
Codeforkids.io.
did. I mean, you
Okay.
can refer to us as just Code for Kids, but
Code for
I
perfect.
appreciate the full name.
Yeah, wonderful. And Stuart, hey, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm glad we could like sneak this into our schedules.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, I've been in education and I used to run my own companies in higher ed before I entered K-12, and so I've naturally had LinkedIn before, but I was never really active on it. And then started just putting out a couple of the great conversations I had in one-on-ones with teachers and district leaders in my work at Code for Kids, and started realizing it really resonated with a lot of people, and also helped me to find the type of kind of forward-thinking educators that I'm seeking out. That are kind of looking for what I do, and I'm looking to work with their type of leadership. And so naturally, it's just, it's I guess one of the positive sides of social media when it goes right,
Yeah.
especially in a professional learning community like that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I try not to like overhype it too much, but sometimes I can't. I'm like when I tell this is what I tell people. When I log into LinkedIn, it's like micro learning sessions.
Yeah,
And usually, yeah, the top like the first five stories are all something looking at a research article
yeah,
that I never would have found on my own. And I'm like, oh, I'm really glad they did that
right.
because now now I can go through it right from here. And so, yeah, just that learning community, like you said, and connecting with the people that you want to connect with. Some people. So with that being said, so we're in the same sandbox,
Right.
you and I. This whole AI education conversation, the big is that what you're seeing in the schools that you work with, and like who do you normally work with
Right.
with
Yeah.
your work with Code for
Yeah.
Kids?
Well, firstly, just on your point, I think it's always valuable to get outside of your echo chambers, because even we talk about the positive side of LinkedIn and the fact that we can connect with folks that, you and me, we've never met at a conference, or we're in different states, but somehow our paths crossed and we were able to learn from each other. Um, Now, it's important to see the other side of the coin, but generally those algorithms don't feed you that stuff because it can make you antsy. But to your question, so we work with districts across the country, quite a few in the southeastern states. I'm in North
Okay.
Carolina, but really all over. And we're working with sometimes teachers directly, but a lot of the time curriculum and instruction departments, instructional technology departments, or the like. Sometimes, if a district's got someone overseeing STEM, it sometimes fits in there. And a lot of time in career and technical education,
Yes.
because we are uniquely focused on the K-8 foundation. What a lot of CTE leaders have kind of realized is no matter how great and well aligned their high school pathways are to the jobs that workforce and industry are informing and asking them to build pipelines for, they can't fill those spots. Students won't enroll if they're not intentionally exposed to those subjects and have the opportunity to build and develop that confidence in those K-8 years. So that's really where we come
Gotcha.
in, and we've done lots of stuff with districts like Metro Nashville in Tennessee, where they had that issue. They had a hypothesis. We rolled out with a bunch of kind of schools, built a report, showed them the data, and overwhelmingly, students said, "I see computer science and understanding AI. is really important for my future. I don't see myself likely to enroll in these pathways in high school. The reason is because I lack confidence, and the reason why I lack confidence is because this is the first time I'm seeing the subject in eighth grade. And so that's generally the pattern we see in a lot of districts.
And I think you pointed out a really important gap there. I and coming from, I was in a K to 6 building myself. There was not a dedicated, STEM teacher, not a dedicated computer science. So they had they had a computer like class, or I guess technology class, but what I was seeing in that class was like, here's how to use like Google Docs, or here's how to
Yeah,
use, slides, and do things to like do presentations or present work and things like that. There's a huge gap, I feel like, in a lot of schools that, you know, um, I don't want to cast aspersions or make assumptions here, but there's a lot of schools that are like, computer science isn't really important for us.
right.
That's, we're a, rural community.
Yeah,
Computer science isn't a big deal here. And I like to, I like to constantly challenge that a lot,
yeah,
because I like to point out the fact that in my 6th grade class that I taught, even though I had students who were literal farmers, get up, do the chores, do all this stuff, they also had devices. They also had social media. Like, that was their norm.
yeah.
And they were, farmers. Like, so it's not like a, just because you're this, not this sort of deal. And so it's kind of like, I hear you, but I don't think that is the situation that you have going here. And I would surmise, and you maybe can speak to this, when a program comes in that has some structure and building blocks, the interest builds over time and the program builds. And then next thing you know, oh, we love our computer science program here, right? So like, have you run into any districts like that? Like, you've come in and they don't have any foundational program at all for STEM or computer science, and do you help them build then?
It's it is often the case that that is
Okay.
exactly what. So let me kind of zoom out for a second. What generally happens, and I've got to generalize here. It is
Mm,
very much different, and there are some districts out there doing a phenomenal job that don't fit this category at all. But
sure.
there, basically what happens is generally, like you said in your example about, some kind of digital literacy, typing skills, etc., etc., that's generally in place in most schools in some shape or form.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same thing that you and I had in school. It's
Yes.
not really
Yes.
different. Maybe doing presentations is a new thing. Um,
Yeah.
but that's not computer science. And then the same with robotics. There's generally some robotics happening in the science and STEM classes. And so it's never kind of a cohesive thing. It
Yeah.
all,
Okay.
the teachers might be doing it in pockets. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
really measured or tracked. You ask the chief academic officer, so is there some computer science? They're like, yeah, there's some coding clubs, there's a bit of robotics taught here. We don't really know. They're very honest. It's happening in pockets. They don't
Yeah.
really know where it is. We come in and say, okay, let's zoom out for a second. Computer science, robotics, digital literacy are not all the same thing. Robotics and digital literacy are part of computer science and so
Sure.
much more. There's data and
Huh.
analysis, cybersecurity. Every state has different standards. You've got CSTA standards too, but there are so many components. Algorithms and programming is just one strand where coding kind of fits in. And so many
Yeah.
folks think, oh, they do a bit of microbit coding, so computer science is taken care of. But then nothing's really focusing on really getting the kids to understand what AI is because it's
Right.
distinct, right? And so
Yeah.
we come in so many ways. Sometimes there's a bit happening already. We help to elevate that, but we also help the districts kind of gain visibility into that. The whole thing that
Yeah.
we say is that computer science, prior to AI, used to be viewed as this thing that was the elective enrichment class, the specialized course that
Yes.
anyone who wanted to be a computer scientist and go work for, the frontier AI labs and Google, Microsoft, etc., that's the
Yep.
subject for them, but that's not the majority. We're
Yes.
saying maybe, yeah, maybe in high school that could still be somewhat true, maybe not, to a certain degree, but in K to 8, it is the foundational literacy that we believe every kid needs to know before they graduate into the world that is being increasingly influenced and shaped by AI and very hidden, non-visible technology. And so to your point about the cell phones, I mean, yeah, everyone's got a phone now. I've been in the United States for 4 years. I come from South Africa originally. The poorest communities, they all have phones. They're all on social media constantly.
Yeah.
Nobody has any clue how an algorithm works and how it's affecting them. And so our
Right.
whole goal is instill that foundational layer. And yes, you will be increasing greater access into kind of vocational opportunities, because generally it's thought of like that in school. How do we get more kids to graduate on time and get a job? So yes,
Yep.
check that box. But the other layer is it gives kids agency. Like
Yeah.
you've got communities like that, like in Memphis, where XAI are like building this crazy
Right.
big, and they're very much, it's so difficult to have agency over what's going on and have a say in that if you don't have the understanding of how this technology actually works. I think the community there is doing a phenomenal job, but it's like we're going to be going into an election soon. You
Yep.
hopefully want everyone to understand kind of how technology works, because AI is probably going to be the most talked about policy angle
I hope so.
that
I
everyone.
hope it is. Like,
So, and I'm not trying to get political here, because
No.
it can go either way. It's not necessarily
Right.
about, taking a political stance. It's more so we it's it's a big part of the future global and national policy debate. And so the best
Yes.
way to understand where your vote should go is actually understanding the technology. And so that's like political, but like it comes into everything. Like
Yeah.
I was just at a conference last week in a Korean technical education conference in North Carolina. They have a computer science mandate. Every high school kid now can't graduate um,
Oh,
high
wow.
school without completing a computer science course. There's no funding
Wow.
to hire computer science teachers, so every teacher
Of
who's teaching
course.
the subject is not a computer
Of
science
course.
teacher. So, and that's kind of our specialty. We have designed our curriculum where you don't need experience. You actually are the facilitator. You're learning alongside them. You're not the expert in the room. But
Mm-hmm.
what what our whole session was about, I presented with the director at Durham Public Schools, and basically we were talking about the fact that we're working with them to stop thinking about building this computer science course and meeting this computer science mandate as a compliance box, but actually thinking about it as the foundational pillar that is going to strengthen every pathway. And they offer, I think, 38 different pathways at that district.
Okay.
And then we connected the dots in agriculture. If you're a farmer, these are the different ways you need to know technology. In business, you need to know it from this lens. In manufacturing, you need to know these things. Technology is just influencing everything. And what workforce and industry is asking for is greater AI fluency, but you can't get fluency without a foundational understanding of how the technology works, because the tools are going to continue changing. So if you want a
Yeah.
long-lasting skill set that's going to evolve as the tools change, you need the foundation. And so
I agree.
that's let me end it there.
No, that's fine. No, listen, hey, we talked about this too. You and I, we're both wordy people.
Oh
So that's
yeah,
what,
we
hey,
absolutely are.
well, we'll see if we can keep this as concise as
Right.
possible. But no, that's fine. But that was a fascinating look and an important one because again, that whole talk of the foundational piece. And so to you, I'm going to ask you this because you've probably done this in a whole bunch of sessions, and I've done it too. So I want to compare notes. So what do you what do you tell people? Like when you explain how AI works, what do you cover?
Well,
If you can give me like three bullet
well,
points.
I want to start with a disclosure is or a disclaimer, sorry.
Yeah.
Is I don't lead sessions that teach people about what AI is. I lead sessions about teaching teachers on how to teach kids about what AI is. But, there's some
Okay.
overlap there. Um,
Yes.
you know, basically data, patterns,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the fact that this is not something that a human being is writing a code in to have an expected outcome. We don't actually understand how exactly why it spits out what it does, which is probably the thing that fascinates and scares me the most. Um,
Yes.
and so what I would say there is it's a machine brain. That's what it is.
Okay, good. Good. We're on the same page because that's yeah. Cuz I've been trying to hone that message with the schools and districts in our region, and even I was lucky enough to get to work with a group of students over the last couple of weeks in one of the summer programs that we offer here at the IU8 that I work
Mm,
for. And so I got to talk to them about a little bit about it. But the main thing I tell people, training data. Like so I say like um, AI is biased, it hallucinates. And I said people are biased and they hallucinate. And all the data that AI has is from people. So there's your bias and hallucination. And I shared this on social media a while ago. I use this analogy. I'm curious what you think of it. But I talk about hallucinations and people making hallucinations by giving them this example. I say, "Can you remember what you had for breakfast today?" And people, oh yeah, pretty confident. Even if you didn't, like you could remember, oh, I didn't have breakfast today. I said, "Can you remember what you had for breakfast last week?" Some people all right there are like, I had to think about that.
yeah, yeah,
But then I keep going and I say, like, how about like a month ago? And then I say a year ago on this day.
yeah.
And then I do the big one. This day, 20 years ago, right? And in that moment, what I tell people is in that moment, what you're doing is you are thinking and going, where was I 20 years ago? What situation was I in? What would I most likely have eaten for breakfast in that situation? And I said, you're going to come up with an answer, but it's not going to be like 100% correct answer.
Yep.
I said, that's a hallucination. You're guessing the best possible guess based on everything that you know about yourself and your
Right.
history.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a hallucination
Yeah.
right there.
There's a
And they're like,
difference. I try to explain this to, I mean, I think like if I actually think about folks that don't really know anything about AI, but know the work that I do, it's my parents. And so
yeah,
I would,
I
who
love
I,
that.
I mean, my father's just retired. Been in education his whole life. But what I say to them is there's a distinction between giving an accurate answer that you're confident in and inferring what you might think is reasonably plausibly the best possible answer, and hopefully no one kind of fact checks it because you don't
Right.
you
Exactly.
don't really know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
No, I love that. Yeah. No. And so that, I asked that just because, again, I was curious because I'm curious now, like what I like to always make sure that I'm on the same page. It's another great thing for LinkedIn too. Are my thinking points along the lines of, the big names in the field, am I doing the same thing? Are we on the same page here? So usually the answer is yes, which is nice to know.
yeah,
Um, there's a big, there's a big push here about this idea of future ready education, future ready skills. So I'm curious from your perspective, what you do with Code for Kids. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, what does future ready education mean to you?
yeah. It's quite a lofty statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
So so what I always say if I'm meeting with someone right at the top of a district that has some control over what's in that mission statement and strategic plan, generally you will see a couple of things that relate to my work is student agency, future readiness or AI readiness, career readiness or employability, something along those lines. Um, and but then you look at how they're trying to achieve that, which is a little bit lofty too.
Yes.
Generally, nowhere in that is if you, the way I explain it is if the world that our students are graduating into is already infiltrated by this technology called AI. And if you think about how quickly that has developed and evolved over the last kind of 4 years since ChatGPT came on the scene and, with generative AI. And you think about, I've got a son going in at first grade next year. If you think about
Okay.
what the world is going to look like 5, 10, I think it's going to be 14 years when he or no, sorry, 11 years when he graduates. Terrible math there, as you can tell. Just imagine how much it's going to be different. And then if you think about, okay, so how do we equip them with the skills and understanding to give them agency over the world? Firstly, they have to understand technology and not any specific current form of that technology, but the foundation, because the current form is going to change and evolve. But if you know the foundational principles and concepts, that's what gives you that kind of long life to kind of really grow and evolve and adapt as the technology changes. The other thing is that the thing I love most about computer science is that, in one of the sessions I gave last week, it was helping teachers that are new to the subject learn how to no longer we had to give them this paradigm shift of you don't need to be the expert in the room. And in fact, even if you know this stuff, you shouldn't act like the expert in the room. And as teachers, we've somehow kind of been trained to like the only way we can confidently walk into a classroom is to know the subject matter like the back of our hand, and at the very least know more than our students,
Yeah.
which is kind of backwards because we really want the students to know a lot. But we don't feel
Yes.
confident if they know more than us, which is, I think just of our, a little bit of our own anxieties. But the thing is that what I focus there is that this subject is not about the outcome. We don't measure, did they get this right or wrong? How do we grade that? And a lot of teachers for the first time are like, how do you grade this subject? Like, can you just tell us if it's right or wrong? And so rather it's here's a few examples of how this could end up, but they need to kind of follow different steps, and you're helping them along the journey and helping them get unstuck. And you're
Yeah.
doing it in a way that's kind of, I think, inquiry-based learning, Socratic
Yeah.
teaching. That is the way of the future because we really want to draw information out of our students. But
Ooh.
through all of that, it's you're helping the kids learn that it's okay to fail, that
Important. Oh
they,
my gosh, so
yeah,
important.
and in fact, when that if you kind of instill that growth mindset where it's almost exciting if you get stuck and you're like, oh, how do we get out of this? How do we problem solve? How do we debug? Like that's a big part of of computer science.
Agreed.
And so it's more so about the skills and lessons they learn along the way to get to an outcome. Then the outcome doesn't really matter. It's what they're building, learning along the way. And I think like I talk about that from a computer science lens, but what I am like really, you see my work on LinkedIn, what I'm really passionate about is helping K-12 educational systems make the shift and take some of those learnings into every subject. Um, and so there's a bit of that. The other element is that I think we need to build foundations. We're always putting band-aid solutions in high school,
Mm,
and then and then moving on, and they don't really work. And we've been making that same mistake for years, way before AI. So I mean, I
yes.
think we need to wake up to that fact. And then I think there's one thing, I mean, Code for Kids does this a lot. We've designed our curriculum to not necessarily be a computer science curriculum for the sake of computer science. It's really a cross-curricular computer science curriculum that
Yeah.
reinforces every subject, even music and art. And so
Yeah.
the thing there is that when kids experience the world outside of school, and I'm looking outside because that's where the window is, and I have to visualize it. But when I think kids have been switching off at school for so long, and again,
Mhm.
before AI, and they switch off because it doesn't feel relevant to them. And when it
Right.
doesn't feel relevant, what's the point they're going to do the bare minimum to get by. And so we've had an engagement problem for a long time. And I think part of that problem is like how school and instruction and the instructional schedule is designed. It's in boxes. And so when
Yes.
you experience the world, and when kids experience the world, they're almost like when they get into school, they have to learn that outside school, things don't work in boxes. Inside school, things work in boxes, and you need to somehow distinguish between the two. So it's almost like we're trying to add this extra layer of education to
Yeah.
them unintentionally. And w- when school, when the classroom feels like you're learning something that you're going to walk outside of school when your parents pick you up and go home, and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember learning about this, this, and this. Now,
Yep.
it doesn't happen as much when you're learning math in a box, ELA in a box, science in a box.
In a box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that curricular elements is so crucial. My son comes home sometimes telling me about what he's learned in science, and I ask him, where did he learn that? He is very fortunate to have won the lottery and gone into a charter school that is all about arts integration. And he's like, I learned it in dance class. Um,
Yeah.
and it stuck with him because it was such a cool dance, right?
Yeah.
And he learns math rules because he acts them out with his peers in front of the class. And so it's like, and it doesn't have to be just like that, but we got to think creatively about how do we make learning more engaging, but way more relevant. And
Oh man.
I think when it comes to future readiness, build the foundations, make learning relevant, destroy the boxes, break down the
Get
silo,
rid of the boxes.
get
Yes.
them, just like unpack everything. And look, this is all easier said than done,
Yeah.
but I think we got to look at how we're training teachers, and they shouldn't enter this profession thinking that they have to be the expert in the room because we now live in a world where AI knows more than everyone. It's
Yeah.
got all the
Yeah.
information, and like people are like, oh, artificial general intelligence is coming. Someone like it's already
Yeah.
here. It's probably a bit of both. But and others are like, oh, this is a bubble, it's going to burst, it's not as good, look at how this new model has failed. This technology is very powerful, and I think intelligence or kind of the purpose of school needs to shift away from like having all the answers and more so thinking about how do we instill in kids the ability to have the best questions and kind of like
Yes, you were
guide.
going there. I was waiting. You were building it
And
up. You were building it up. I
I
was like,
saw
yes,
I saw your
he's
body
going.
language. Imagine I didn't
It's like
say
he's
that.
going
You
for
would
it.
have just been so disappointed. But
I was
yeah,
like, he's building up. He's gonna do it. Yes. No.
we've
Yeah.
all got access to the same AI tools, but we can all come up with different questions and requests. It's going
Yes.
to give us different information. Um,
Yeah.
so anyways, let me
Yeah.
again, like you got to put a time limit
It's
on
okay.
me on these things, but hopefully
It's
that's
okay.
helpful.
No, because that was great. Like, and the thing was, like, you were going, and I need to like write down things as we're going. I didn't do that today, but there was like a million things I wanted to build off of there, and of course now they're all gone. But
That's okay.
you came back to that idea, and again, the whole foundation of this show is the idea of curiosity, asking questions, and even like the part that I'm most excited about with having these conversations is that we all don't have the answers.
Right.
And so what the things that I'm curious about or that you're curious about, there might not necessarily be answers. And to me that's like the fun part. To me that's the fun part, and I tr- I think you hit on so many great points. The teacher training point is spot on. I was dumbfounded how many new teachers I met over the last couple years of my teaching that just came out of school, and I asked them just, hey, did you talk about AI at all in your coursework? Um, and like all of them were like, other than don't use it to do stuff, no. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh
right.
boy, okay,
Yeah.
and I just saw a TikTok video yesterday. Speaking of that negative side, someone saying that they're currently in a master's program for teaching, and that the professors at their school are like forcing them to use AI. And it's like, you have to use AI for these and have to do that. And she was like enraged, very angry about the fact that she's essentially being forced to use AI.
Mm.
And I liken it to I liken it to this story that I have. I think this will be the first time I've shared it publicly. So this is a cool story from
Exciting.
from my college. Yeah, from my college experience, we had a professor, and he was well known. He was very intelligent, very smart, but he was a psychologist.
Okay.
But he taught a class in our education about family dynamics. So the whole class was about family dynamics. But he was very coarse in the way he spoke and his language. He was very just, casual, matter of fact. And his style of teaching was really, really interesting and off putting to a lot of us because we had never had a class that worked like this. He literally walked in and said, um, this class is based off of your questions and your discussion. If you have nothing for me, I'm just going to tell you stories that may or may not have anything to do with this class. So, and to your point, it wasn't, I'm coming in and I'm going to impart knowledge on you. It was, what do you want to know? And we'll talk about it. We'll draw it out of you. And a lot of us were like, what do you mean? Like, I have a say? Like, you're not just going to like talk and I have to take notes and stuff. That threw a bunch of people off.
Yeah.
Um,
Uncomfortable. And
right.
it's very different and new to like how we learn and probably how many folks have been parented. So
Absolutely.
and yeah, I think we're waking up to the fact that we need to kind of approach it differently. But you're absolutely right. In the teacher preparation programs and even the full blown kind of education degrees, it's um it's not really being approached. And I think that what something you said there is, so you gave that example of that one teacher who's so upset that it's been forced on her. Forcing it on someone is also not the solution. And
Agreed.
and
Agreed.
so and I think people jump to that, and
Hmm.
when you can get so much more buy-in if you spend some time slowing it down a little bit and be like, hey, you don't have to use it, but can we all agree to just learn about what this stuff actually is? And
Yeah.
then
Yes.
and then you approach and they buy in, and the same is true for kids.
Yeah.
Like we're forcing kids to use AI tools sometimes in school now. There's humanoid robots going up to to some
Oh,
district.
don't even.
Um, look,
Oh my
look, that
gosh.
is an outlier, so I'm not going to pretend that
It's
it's
okay.
happening everywhere. But I think the thing is that we're either like too progressive and forward thinking, and almost like jumping to things that are probably very damaging, and then
Yep.
we're just it's very much black or white. Are we in or are we out? And the same is true for our policies, and a lot of the AI policies that states and districts come out with they're very much focused on, okay, what are the guardrails? And you got to start there, but they kind of end
Yes.
there. And the big thing that I speak to so many districts about is the the notion is generally we have to train the teachers and get them on board before we can even think about like what or whether we teach the students about this stuff. And
Agreed.
our approach is the teachers shouldn't be the expert in the room. Teach them, have them learn about the technology while teaching the kids about the technology as
Yep.
not being the expert in the room. And so they learn alongside them. And you don't need all the professional learning or PD. You can maybe do
Right.
that on top, but they buy into it when they're like, oh, I built my first website with my students today. It was crazy. Like that is generally the feedback we get is like they love that and nothing's being forced on them. It's a little scary to
Right.
walk into a classroom not knowing the subject matter. But after like lesson two or three, they realize, oh, this stuff's actually really cool. I've never taught like this before, so I like this. But I think, yeah, I think, just coming back to a quick story on how Code for Kids started. We basically, our founder taught himself how to code in university because he was never taught like what any of this stuff was in school, like everyone else. Um, and he decided to
My
spend, yeah,
to pause you 1 second there. My previous guest that I just had on, she did the same thing.
amazing.
She told her story of growing up outside of New Jersey
Yeah,
in Newark, New
yeah,
Jersey, and talking about it sounded a lot like the movie and book Matilda.
yeah.
She would go to the library and she would read books about HTML coding
Wow,
and teach herself how to do these things and how to build these things
brilliant.
because she wanted to learn them
Yeah,
and learn how to do them. So
right.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No,
yes,
that's
yeah.
okay. That's fantastic. But yeah, it was kind of similar. I mean, I don't know if he was going to the library.
But
He was finding the information somewhere and teaching himself this. And so I think it came up in, when he was spending time with his family about this skill he learned and what it was, creating, because he eventually started creating edtech businesses out of this skill. Um, and he ended up spending a bit of time with his 8-year-old niece, who was by no means top of her class. She was like right down the middle.
yeah,
But he spent a bit of time like teaching her what he had spent some time learning. And she was then, it was 2 years later, and she could pass a entrance exam for a software engineer's job that required a college degree. And it blew his mind. He could not believe it. And so he went to his niece's school and told them the story. He was not a teacher or anything like that. And they were blown away too. So they asked him to come teach what he had taught his niece. And so he did. And then schools just started finding out about
yeah,
Code for Kids. And that's really what led to, I mean, it wasn't Code for Kids at the time, it was just him. But
yeah.
it eventually led to the fact that these key learnings where kids as young as 10 years old can learn a skill that could actually give them a job at the age of 10. So that's future readiness right there. Um,
Absolutely.
his niece went on, I think she's just graduated high school. Um, she's gone in to study music in college. So like very
Love it.
different, but when we look at agency, we know that she's got this understanding of how the stuff works because she's built this stuff herself. Um,
Yeah,
and that's
that's
really
wild.
that's really what it comes down to is like we need to be we need to build inquisitive kids
Yeah.
that are not focused on the outcome but kind of the destination. We need to realize that kids are so much more capable than we give them credit for. And
I amen to that. I say that to everyone.
right,
I say that to everyone
yeah,
because despite my millennialness and all that that implies with technology,
right,
I always joke with people, millennials are like the go-to tech people of their families because we've been a part of every
yes,
technological advancement
we have.
from like from the typewriter. I remember playing with typewriters. I didn't actually have to use one, but I got to play with them. Then I
Really
got to
good.
play with electronic typewriters, right? And then next thing you know, there's computers. There's Apple IIe's. There's the old school Dells, Windows 95,
Yeah.
and then from there it just takes off.
Yeah.
And so I'm always curious about technology. That's always been my like side. I want to learn about
Right.
technology. And that's exactly what happened here. It's how I got into AI. Just like,
Awesome.
oh, I want to spend an entire summer learning about this. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Right.
Said no one ever, but like that idea of just being able to have the resources to learn. And now what's wild is like, I feel like AI is an even better resource for learning than
Yeah.
anything that I had before.
Right.
When I did classroom rules or norms and how do we, I would bring them in the conversation. What do you think should be a rule here? What do you think should be a rule? How do you learn best? Like what would make a difference for you? It's it's that same look that you get from that class that I was in college. Like, wait a minute, what do you mean? We're a part of this? Like we get to be, so these are and so
Ca-
taking
Can
that
I
idea.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
did it do to their engagement?
And
When they saw you as vulnerable and the fact that you were showing that you knew potentially less than they did and can make
yeah,
mistakes?
I'll tell you. Well, one thing that was a side effect, and I don't know if it was this particularly, I had less issues with behaviors and students in class, especially from the worst behaviors in class. To me, I thought engagement was great. And, you know, but again, that's not everybody.
Yeah.
I would never expect everybody to fall into that category there,
Mm.
but that's just what worked for me.
Well,
And
I think the kind of the reason why I ask you that is because that's exactly how we train our teachers and onboard them is we even have a section of our kind of onboarding where we talk about the fact that I don't know is the most powerful teachable moment you can probably have. And
yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, I was with about like 40 teachers last week, I could see when I asked them at the beginning of the session, like, who's teaching computer science this year? And all their hands went up. Who's taught computer science before? Two hands went up. And how are you feeling about teaching it? They were all like terrified, anxious. I don't know
Yeah.
this. I don't know anything, so I'm so scared. Like those were the reasons they gave.
Yeah.
When they got to kind of this section of the session, they were like, "Oh, yes, that makes sense. Why do I always feel like I need to walk into a classroom to be able to teach? Because the art of teaching, the craft of teaching is not the subject matter. It's how you go about imparting and drawing out the subject matter from other people. And I think it's like, to your point, when you show that vulnerability, that openness to your kids, and you're like, hey, guys, because this is very relevant to AI literacy and computer
Yeah.
science right now, is hey, guys, this, like, that actually no one really knows, even the people that do know, no one really knows like what the hell this technology is and like what it's doing.
Yep.
Like we're all figuring it out, and like, most of your teachers here are like probably no less than I know, and I'm gonna say you tell you I don't really know much. When they see that, they're like, huh, I can trust this person more. I can get vulnerable with this person. Like, I don't care if I get it right because he doesn't know. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
suddenly the stance changes, like the mood, the kind of almost like the theme of the class, the goal of the class is not necessarily about um having the answers, having the outcomes. It's about like exploring together, exploring how to get through the journey of getting to that
Yes.
outcome together. Like the kids are going to just trust you more. You're going to have less behavior problems, but you're going to have more engaged kids. And what we always tell them is, so like a common thing is always, so how do you differentiate learning? Do you have like the latest AI tutor embedded in your platform and all that stuff? And we're like, no, like we don't do that. But what we
Yeah.
do is we train the teachers. Well, firstly, we do benchmark assessments, which no one does in computer science. So we do like standards aligned benchmark assessments. So like teachers know
Love that.
where their kids are and the district knows where the gaps are across schools. And then the other thing that we do is we then say to them, this is so this is where you're at right now. This is where you're trying to get to. And then they kind of like the big thing here is getting the kids to kind of come alongside the journey with them. And what we'll say is, here are the kids that are kind of like behind and struggling. They're struggling in these ways. So, like the benchmarking data, it's really there to just help the teacher know, okay, I'm going to focus a little bit more on these kind of standards, on these topics, so that it's not this just generic instructional day where it relates to some people, it doesn't relate to others. And then we give a little
Yeah.
bit of enrichment to the kids racing ahead, but not necessarily to skip ahead, but to go deeper into the subject matter. But the thing that I love most about the model is we get those kids to kind of co-teach with the teacher and be the leaders in the room. And then they're learning a new skill, but they're also helping to give the teacher more reach and sometimes teaching the teacher a little bit too. And those kids love it. And the peers, their peers in the class, they love it because they're like, oh, cool. I don't have to, have Mr. Brown teach me this. It's like I have my friend teach it, and they're like so much more reciprocal. Like that is how I think we scale differentiated learning and maybe like use technology in some clever way, but we don't necessarily employ a humanoid robot into the class.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
I don't want to go down that road at all.
right.
To kind of bring us around about to a bit of a close here, because again, I'm these podcasts are dangerous because I have loved every guest that I've had on here, and oh, I wish I could have like Joe Rogan style like 3 hour long podcasts, but nobody wants that. So,
Well,
but I feel like I could.
educators are too busy. So
Exactly. So
unfortunately, I
that's why
don't
I'm
think
trying to
any
like
of them are tuning into those 3 hour long podcasts.
no, no, or listening to them in 15,
Lightning
20 minute
speed.
chunks.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what I do. I go through everything 1.7 to whatever,
To
depending on
exit.
who it
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
right.
So to kind of wrap us up here, so the whole focus of this show is curiosity and the connections that we make through that curiosity. So for you specifically, you've given us a wonderful foundation. I mean, there was a lot of wonderful information and sound bites in there, especially from the platform, what you're offering, but also like the the musings, the thought behind what you're doing. And I think that's the more important part that I know I don't hear a lot of that from a lot of, ed tech companies of like, this is how we shape these things. That idea of changing the role of the teacher, no matter how controversial it is, I think it is incredibly relevant to the discussion right now. Um, Especially with the discussion of programs like Alpha School and things like that, and that model of the 2 hour learning and what role does a teacher actually play in the classroom. So I love that you're bringing that to the forefront when you bring this program out there. So one of the things is our curiosity. So for you personally, what are you curious about when it comes to AI in education? And this is a purposefully broad question because I love to see where people hone their answers.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah.
so there's like a number of things I'm curious about. One is how we are going to bring together so many layers of from a policy perspective to a state uh, uh, funding perspective to workforce and industry perspective to district leadership to boards, like all of that. There are so many things with unconnected dots. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like really bring it together, but it's a tough thing, right? Because a lot of my work is like change management for teachers. And so that's why I think about the teacher pipeline. I have no business caring about how teachers are learn like that's not what my work is, but I naturally think about like how can we get to teachers sooner before they get into the classroom because we're just going to continue in the cycle of okay, train them, get them the certification, bring them into the classroom, then do the change management so the instruction could be better, etc., etc. And so I'm always thinking about how do we actually make this work on a macro level, on a systems level, on a structural level? I think there's so many parts to it. It really takes a village. I
Yeah.
think I think
Yeah.
what we're focused on right now is getting state plans and guidelines and frameworks together, and then districts kind of coming on board and coming having their own AI policies. But I just really hope that it doesn't end there because we need to kind of go a step further. I see this with mandates all the time in states where it's like the mandates come from a good place, but then it's treated like a box check and it's not effective, and then it moves on and just creates more burden for teachers and educators. And so we really need to start like thinking about things from a holistic picture, and like, because what we're going to do then is just come up with the policy, come up with the mandate, move on, then come up with another mandate because the mandate's not working, but keep that mandate. They don't go well together. It's just like it doesn't really work out. Um, what I'm curious about too is I think teachers are some of the, like, they've always been, but I think like in this time, this day and age more than ever, they are arguably the most important profession in the world. Like they are, you've got like the AI doomers and all of those camps. I'm sure you kind of follow along with what I'm saying. There is like some people think it's going to be existential, it's going to like it's going to be sci-fi, etc., etc. Like, you know, regardless of what's true, I think like we we don't have any more critical job to play on how we're thinking about education and school. And then you zoom out and you think about teachers are some of the most burnt out workers in the economy, in the workforce. They are the most underpaid. And I
Facts.
I am so curious about like how do we change that? Like surely we have to find a way that changes that. Like it can't, it just can't go on like that anymore. And and there's so much to unpack there and so much to do, but like
Uh,
but that's, it's something I'm curious about. Not not relevant to education. The last thing is I am so freaking curious about like why the neural networks spit out what they do.
yeah.
Like
I love it. The technical
yeah,
curiosity.
it's
Yes.
like I am like, it's fascinating, like that
Yeah.
we are making so many advancements and no one really knows why. And so like it's just like, increase compute power and increase the data and get better results, but we don't really know why. And and it's like this is really just starting to impact every part of our life. And I heard about a study recently, or like a new like subsector of machine learning that is devoted to figuring out exactly that. Um,
I think I saw the same thing.
yeah,
I think you and I probably saw the same
yeah.
thing. They're trying
I
to
was like,
map.
finally.
Yeah, they're trying to map from like
Yeah,
when it comes in, where does it go?
yeah,
Like, and trying to map that whole process. And I like I like your analogy there, the machine brain. I use that a lot. I say our brain takes in so much information that we take for granted.
mm,
Sights, sounds, smells, text,
right,
feel, everything. You take in so much and you don't even recognize it. Um, and these machine brains only take in right now a fraction of that.
yeah,
So, people are always like, oh, we'll build this, super intelligence AGI. And I argue, and again, this is from a completely non-technical perspective, but I argue that we'll always be missing something.
yeah,
We'll always be missing something.
absolutely.
And I referenced in the last episode and probably a million times before, but I reference Matt Damon's character in Good Will Hunting.
Yeah,
Okay. Someone who has this massive amount of information and knowledge and he could churn out anything you wanted him to do, an argument, a paper, or whatever, and he can do it at the drop of a hat. Sounds familiar. That's what I always tell people. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
right.
Can do all that stuff, but doesn't have actual experience. Just has like
This is the data.
and yeah, just has the data of someone's thoughts that they wrote down. And I tell people all the time, how often do you actually record your thoughts? Right? Like how often do people actually record their thoughts? Sadly, not often.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Sadly, not often. I said, so think about how much is missing from the data when you don't have actual thoughts and you don't have those actual connections that miss our part that the neural networks of the machines don't have.
Right.
The connecting the smell of something to an experience. AI can't do that. I always make that argument that Well, and to be quite honest, I hope that we don't have AI that gets there.
Yeah.
I hope that we don't,
Right.
to be
Absolutely.
quite honest.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that the
listen,
emotional
oh yeah, go ahead.
intelligence layer, I mean, and it's not even like AI can like give you some emotional intelligent answers,
Hmm.
emotionally intelligent answers, should I say? But like it can't feel them.
Correct.
And that's
Big
the
distinction.
yeah, that's the difference. And like we just need to ensure that we preserve those qualities.
Yeah. And to end on that point, something I've been following very closely, talks to the people who
AI
are on the other side.
whistleblowers.
Yes.
Yeah,
The AI whistleblowers,
yeah,
like
I
he
listen
talks
to
to
them
the
too.
other side.
Yeah,
And those conversations, it's fascinating, first of all,
right.
to hear how all of them are so similar. And it's also fascinating to hear like their ideas and their plans. And again, they're all so fascinatingly similar. And they all, despite knowing what they know, still have hope. It
Yes.
might be slim,
Yeah,
but they have hope, and
very well said.
it's
Yeah.
so that's where I land is I would love to see, and like you said, you brought it up earlier, hey, we got an election coming up here. And in his most recent episode, he had the guy from OpenAI. I'm going to butcher his last name, but it's Daniel something with a K.
Yeah, I heard that.
But that's what he said. The next election is going to be incredibly important to the direction of which way we go.
Right.
And I hope, and again, this is why that TikTok side is valuable. The LinkedIn side is valuable as well. And the answer, as with everything, I can't believe we haven't like learned this as a species yet. The answer is always somewhere right in the middle, in between those two.
Yeah.
So I, oh man, see, like dangerous. You put the two of, oh boy, yep. Wait, you know what? We might need a follow up. So
Wait,
that's what I've been suggesting.
we'll definitely need part two.
Yeah, definitely need part 2 or 3 or 7, whatever we need. So,
If anyone will
Stewart,
tune
thank you
in.
so much. Yeah, Stewart, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course.
This was a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing the work that you're doing. And so I've been, we've been saying, we're both on LinkedIn. Is there any other, places where people can find you, and anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. Definitely check out our website. It's c4k.io. So the letter
Okay.
C, the number 4, the letter K. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Stewart Brown. If you're looking for anyone that works with in that name with anything to do with AI literacy and computer science, you'll find me.
Okay.
I've got a Substack too, and I can share the link after this, but I post there
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. No, wonderful. Thank you. And, yeah, I appreciate your time today, and thanks for, being curious and making sure we all stay. You were the first one that brought up like a technical curiosity, so I love it. I love
Of
it.
course.
Yeah, so
Um,
thank you,
it
and
was my pleasure.